So,
Yes.
ironically, and Hori can attest to this through our messages, Kevin has held a press conference basically saying, don't worry about Marvel, we know what we need to do to fix up and look sharp.
So,
But I decided there was an issue before he said that, and I already
you
went
did.
to work.
You did.
Because Conor gets shit done. And I have very strong feelings about these things.
Well,
And it isn't just Marvel we're going after, it's DC as well. Because although DC are rebuilding, they haven't started yet, so I'm hoping James Gunn gets the message and knows what to do.
get some of the early.
Yeah. So, I've titled this What DC and Marvel Need to Do to Stay Relevant. But it's not just relevant, it's also successful.
Yeah.
The big thing, first and foremost, is there is a bit of superhero fatigue going on right now.
Yes.
And what they need to both do to ease this is slow down production slightly, which is DC are doing because they're getting ready to rebuild. But Disney and Warner Brothers, owning Marvel and DC respectively, need to start pumping out other projects.
Yeah.
Just so, percentage-wise, it feels like superhero films aren't everywhere. That's first and foremost, and that's for both of them. So what I've said for Marvel is they need to slow down output. Too much Marvel content is robbing the joy from many people. And I mean this in two ways. There's the first way, which is people literally aren't enjoying it as much. But it's also the second way where it's turned some people bitter, and now then people are trying to ruin it for other people.
Yeah, and I think it's also losing some of those casual fans. Because if you look at it in like the build up to Endgame, it was the films
all anyone was talking about.
Well, yeah, it was more spread out, but it's like that slower spread out build up. Like people started to latch onto it, and people were talking about it, and it got more and more traction, and pulled in a lot of fans that weren't superhero or comic book fans into this world.
Well, I knew people who hadn't even been following the MCU up until Endgame, who, when everyone got really excited after Infinity War, went, holy shit, this is like 10 years in the making. I'm going to catch up on all the films so that I can watch.
But I think what's happened, like you're saying, is Marvel has then catapulted off that and gone, right, we have finished that plan. We're building a new arc. We can do this from the get-go. Like, let's ramp up projects so we can have more. Everyone wants more Marvel. And it's like, they've now pushed away the casual fans, which we've talked about a few times with like, casual fans aren't going to sit down and watch every single show that comes out to know what needs to be known in the films, which is then causing them to not enjoy the films as much. And it feels like, oh, there's another 2 months later and there's another Marvel. I haven't caught up on the last one. Like, it gets to that point where if casual fans get too much behind, they'll just stop watching. Like, they're not going to put in the time to catch up because
100%.
They're not seeing the talk for it. It's not pop culture. It's falling out of pop culture a little bit.
Yeah, exactly that. Next one, and this is going to sound hilarious.
Yeah.
Stop being cheap.
Well,
they are using a lot of VFX, and it has been very clear for a long time now that these VFX artists are being underpaid and overworked. They're on constant what they're called, like, crunches to get stuff met, and it means it's not up to scratch in some cases, which is causing fans to it's giving fans another thing to shit on, as well as obviously terrible working conditions.
What's happening as well is, like, I saw another thing on this, and it's how Ant-Man, regarding Ant-Man's VFX, and it was a studio saying that obviously works on many Marvel films. Black Panther, because of the title name of what it was number one priority for VFX studios. That got all the best VFX artists and all the best budget. Like, the budget got more weighted to that than any of the other films, which makes me give me the sense that, like, Marvel is not really raising their VFX budget enough to cover all the projects. So it's like they're bulk buying projects basically with studios, and it's like,
yeah, they're buying 100,000 hours and just them budgeting the time rather than going, here, get this done and we'll pay you.
Yeah, so it's like more effort is being put on certain films, which is why like Black Panther effects felt better than Ant-Man, even though some of the same studios worked. It's like, it's very much like what you're hearing is the VFX, and I've said it from a point of view which I think is what's caused this to happen, which is Marvel's set up contracts with these studios and has ramped up what they're wanting, but not paying more. And the studios have already agreed terms, and it's like they don't want to lose out on, because they know the problem is with Marvel. A studio says no, Marvel knows they can get a different studio. Like any smaller studio is gonna chomp at the chance to work on a Marvel film.
There are so many artists, and this is the same in all kinds of art,
Well, yeah,
which is part of the problem. There are so many artists who just want a chance. They will undercut themselves and the
yeah,
competition
to
to
get a
the
foot
point
in.
where it's actually not sustainable just to get a foot in. And then it causes the entire market to go down instead of up.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I think Marvel ramping up how many projects they're doing has kind of forced this to come about.
100%. Next, follow James Gunn's lead and find a
Yes.
way to convert film lovers into comic book lovers. And there's a big reason for this. Big reason. A, more money coming through the comics.
Yeah.
And more fans buying stuff can allow them to use some of that money on films, but also to output comics. But also you can look at what fans are buying to influence, okay, what character's getting more popular all of a sudden? They're doing a Rogan Gambit comic book series right now. If they manage to convert, say, I don't know, 5%, 2% of the film lovers into comic book lovers,
yeah,
and they can look at what they're buying and go, oh, they're all really enjoying that Rogan Gambit story.
Well,
they're pretty obscure characters. Should we do a film on that?
It benefits them also in the sense of like, if you can convert the film viewers and the me, like not so much super casual fan, but like the people more like me who don't really buy the comics. Like, I go online and do my research on things, but I don't spend the time reading comics. Convert people like me that watch all the stuff into comics. They're then going to get more invested in what's going on in the films if they start to then they're reading comics and like, oh wait, that's from I know that person from the comics, or wait, this is happening in the films. Why don't I go see which comic this can pull from? And then it becomes like a cycle, which is what DC's doing with their slate or whatever. But
exactly, and it's not like, oh, people who watch DC films are only comic book fans. It's not the case at all. Oh. And last but not least, embrace what started the MCU. Look back at what got people to fall in love originally and look at that. But do not fold to fans' nostalgia. And don't get me wrong, this is probably the most difficult thing because it is a balancing act. But you have to look at what made people fall in love with your product versus where you are now and move it a bit more this way without collapsing completely. Because let's be honest, as a general audience, fans are dumb as fuck and don't know what they want.
Yes.
They will complain that, oh, it doesn't feel as interlinked and it doesn't have as many characters in it. And then you get something like Spider-Man No Way Home and people go, oh my God, they just had cameos for cameo's sake. So then you go to like Doctor Strange where they feel like more weighted cameos, but they're shorter. Oh, they got John Krasinski for like 2 minutes. No one is ever going to be fully happy.
No.
But I do agree that they are drifting a bit too far away from what started the MCU and what made it phenomenal in a time where superhero interest is at a downturn. And if they don't pull it back slightly, they could lose people more long term.
Yeah. I think they're in a weird... It was always going to be a struggle for them to transition off of Endgame and continue this. But I do think they went too much too quick. Like they tried to think they tried to go with the idea of like, oh, people are loving this so much they want more. Let's give them more. When in like quantity of films, when in reality we just needed this to keep going at kind of the pace it was at.
2 films a year is more than enough.
Just put.
In fact, you could probably, if they're going to do a TV like if they go for a
do
TV
2
show
films in
every
a show.
year. No, but I'm saying if they do 2 TV shows a year or a TV show a year, they could probably do 3 films across 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's probably enough for people to go, you know what, there's always something.
Yeah.
It gives people more time to work on it. It allows the script to be more fleshed out. It means something like Blade script not being good enough, which, bearing in mind how much flack other projects have got for having a poor script, I would love to see how shit that Blade script was.
Been a shredder now.
It would probably fix a lot of these quality control issues.
Yeah. I think it's an issue that you see in production, in manufacturing, where people scale up for a demand that they think they're going to sustain, and then they either scale up and they don't scale up well enough, which is sort of what we're seeing with Marvel, is like they're lacking in VFX now because they've not scaled it properly. They're biting off more than they can chew with like trying to pump out these projects and scripts not being filled, like things having to be delayed, like problems that probably wouldn't have occurred if films were more spread out. And then also demand's fallen off a little bit because of that.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
but on to DC and what they need to do.
Yes, DC's issues.
Priority number 1. Fix the HBO Max situation.
Yeah.
This doesn't... So, I mean, for James Gunn's DCU image, which I like, to actually work, the content needs to be available, ideally worldwide, but definitely more than just America. And right now, I believe HBO Max is only available in America and Canada.
Probably.
So, either make HBO Max available worldwide, or as much of the world as possible, and where it's not available, strike deals to get that content put somewhere else, or just strike deals for every region to get that content put. Strike deal up with Netflix to put the HBO shows on Netflix in Europe or whatever.
Yeah, maybe people will keep the Netflix on.
But do you know what I mean? You've got to find a way, because when you've put out your slate and a lot of it is already guaranteed to be TV shows, stuff like the Green Lantern show and the Booster Gold show, do not make me not watch it, because I'll not watch it out of fucking spite.
People need to remember, like, yes, there are ways, like, if you get Sky, you can watch some HBO stuff, and like there's ways for like now to like there's ways to find the odd shows on different platforms, but they're all scattered. People like Disney Plus.
What's easy.
Well, yeah, it's convenient. It always comes down to convenience. It's why Netflix blew up when it did, because everyone was like, "Oh, one streaming platform for all these new shows and stuff. Cool, yeah." Now and Netflix
there was only Netflix at the time, everything was on Netflix as well.
Yeah. Netflix is now making it a pain in the ass. People are leaving it because it's no longer convenient. Disney, everything Disney related, Marvel, Star Wars, all in one place on Disney Plus. Convenience. If you want to mirror what Star Wars has done, where it's all connected across TV shows, film, games, comics, or whatever else they want to do, it needs to be accessible. Like HBO Max not being anywhere else is a huge issue. And I would like to think that James Gunn has gone with this plan of TV shows and whatnot and announced it all because he knows HBO Max is going to be coming to other countries, and he knows that like it's not going to be an issue. Because
either that or he's I'm just going to announce this and put a fuck ton of pressure on them to fix it.
That.
Because let's be clear, he is the top of DC now.
Yes.
He's having meetings with the top of Warner Brothers.
Well, yeah, he's got the financial guy that's with him and him. You know for a fact that he's going, right, this is what I want to do creative-wise. And then the financial guy's like, well, if we want to make the most money, we need HBO Max to... And they're both together going to be going like, look, Warner Brothers, you want to make money off the DC stuff? This is what the fans want. The fans are loving this. Where the fuck is HBO?
Exactly.
Like, why is it not in these countries?
And don't get me wrong, if for some reason a company the size of Warner Bros. Discovery, whatever their conglomerate name is,
Yeah.
can't afford to roll it out themselves, like I said, strike up deals.
I
For fuck's sake, Disney would make a deal to have that content on their platform. I know HBO might not like the idea, but I'm sure they'd strike a deal. Oh, you can watch Batman followed by Iron Man on our fucking streaming service. Disney would take that deal on.
Yeah.
Get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I know business isn't that simple.
No.
But you've got to find a way to make it work.
I'm hopeful that there is some contract they have with Sky, which is why it's not come, and Now TV, which is why it's not launched in the UK yet. But that's coming to an end, and hopefully they're going to go, we're now launching in the UK.
Yeah.
But it's something that needs to be high up on their priority list. Otherwise, no matter what James Gunn puts out, half of it's going to be inaccessible for the rest. And yeah.
Next up on my list, be different and outlandish. I want them to use Elseworlds to create these fun, cool concepts, and not just use it as a dumping ground for projects that have already come out that they've deemed not good enough for the DCU. If the Elseworlds banner just becomes this was shit and we want to get rid of it, I'm going to be very upset. I want Elseworlds to be like projects like Werewolf by Night, which are just these weird things that they don't need to be part of the DCU.
Yeah.
But they're cool concepts that we want to try out and have fun with. Stuff like Matt Reeves is a brilliant example.
Yeah.
Matt Reeves doing his style of Batman, we know that's under Elseworlds, but that's what I want Elseworlds to be. I don't want it to be, oh, well, we've already filmed Aquaman, so that should go under Elseworlds.
I think what we're going to have, I'm hopeful in what we're going to have is all that, like, Zack Snyder's, all his DC verse is going to be DCEU. That's what it's going to be under. It'll be remembered as this was DCEU. We have the new stuff is DCU, and that's going to be what it's going to be known as going forward. And then Matt Reeves and the Joker.
Yeah. Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah. Those will be Elseworlds. And like you say, they need to make sure that they're not, if an idea is bad or if an idea doesn't fit into the DCU but it's good, sure, put it under Elseworlds. If it's something where like it doesn't fit and then it's like the script's not great, don't just make it and go, oh well, it can go under Elseworlds.
Yeah, exactly.
It needs to, like, I'm hoping that they use Matt Reeves' Batman as quite the like bar. Like, this is the standard we want for Elseworlds.
What they need to do is they need to, and don't get me wrong, it shouldn't be just like an open invite, but they should create a way for talented script writers and directors to pitch them Elseworlds ideas.
Yeah.
So, for instance, me and you, for instance, I know I've just said talented script writers, but suspend your disbelief for a minute. But we have a great idea for telling a really cool version of a Kryptonian story.
Yeah.
Set on Krypton. We know the DCU makes no sense for it because Krypton's already destroyed and there's no point in a flashback film.
Yeah.
But we want to try it. We want to do a really kind of, maybe not quirky, but different style of cinematography to really just have some fun with it. Let us pitch that idea to them.
Yeah.
Let us come in and go, this should be your Superman Elseworlds film.
I think that
should be, and just like every 2 or 3 years, we get just this phenomenal, off the wall, batshit crazy kind of, oh, what if comic book films were like this? And guess what? They can use that as market research.
Yeah. I'd like to think, or I would hope that maybe like James Gunn, like the directors that like Matt Reeves and stuff that know James Gunn, if they have an idea, like he has an open line of like he will hear an idea for, and they can come in and be like, I have this idea, it's DC character, they pitch it and he goes, well, it doesn't fit in the DCU, or that character's already been used in a different way, but sure,
But we have 80 million left in the Elseworlds budget. If you can make it for that, it's yours.
Or like the other thing is like, I would hope that maybe there's situations where James Gunn's like, oh, I really like this character, but actually doesn't really fit in. There's not like a good way to work this character into my DCU, but I would love to see a film made.
Exactly.
Maybe that goes in Elseworlds. I want them to. It needs to be of like the standard for what James Gunn wants for DCU, but it doesn't fit in DCU.
Exactly.
And hopefully that's what they do with it.
And then, last but not least for DC,
mm-hmm.
let Batman, Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, and your other A-listers shine and be your superstars.
Mm-hmm.
But don't be afraid to try and turn your B, C, and D listers into household names like Marvel's done. Let's be fucking clear. Thor, Iron Man, The Guardians.
Yeah.
They were all be at very best towards D-list characters before the MCU started. People will. The Avengers weren't even A-list. It wasn't the Justice League and the Avengers were seen as equals. It was the Justice League, and the best thing Marvel had to compare them to was probably the X-Men.
Yeah.
So, and don't get me wrong, James Gunn was a big part of that. He made the Guardians as famous as he. So I believe he can do it, but I want them to try and do it because Marvel had to do it out of necessity because they didn't have the rights to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Or the X-Men to start with.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a choice.
Just because DC has the rights to everything doesn't mean that they should now ignore those.
Exactly, because there are going to be some diamonds in that rough.
Oh yeah, and it's like DC has so many heroes. Like if there's a situation and a theme or something going on, and you're like, oh, a hero that would do this would work well in these situations. Like I bet you can find one, and if it feels like it would fit, bring it in. Doesn't matter if they're known or unknown. And I do think they're going to try and do this with some of their TV shows and stuff, is like have that be start of like a taster of like these B-list, like unknown characters, like the likes of Booster Gold and stuff.
Yeah.
And I think they've already sort of teased that they are going to do this. Let's hope they just continue that way.
Yeah. But I do think there's a big difference between their B and C listers getting TV shows versus getting big budget films.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I do agree.
But yeah, that's it. And don't get me wrong, there is obviously more they can do. Marvel needs to sort out their quality control issue. Because while I will sit here and go, yes, I enjoyed the stuff, I would be crazy to say that there hasn't been a decline in overall quality.
Yeah.
And we can't be too harsh on DC because we don't know what James Gunn's version of DC looks like yet. But what we can do is go, these are the things that we, as people who spend far too much time watching it and paying attention to it, as well as like every single Marvel film I go to with at least my girlfriend and probably my sister, brother, father, and her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And they are all casuals. I don't think any of them listen to a podcast regularly, and I always get their opinion on it.
Yeah.
So like these are the things that people are complaining about, and Marvel do need to pay attention. And
I hope
DC
that they
have an opportunity to. DC have an opportunity if Marvel can't fix that to go yoink. Thanks for getting the crowd warmed up for us. Here is a phenomenal Flash trilogy starring Connor Knight. James
yeah, this is the thing. It's like DC being in rebuild phase. If Marvel starts to not crumble, they're not gonna it's not gonna collapse. The MCU's gonna keep going, but it's like if their numbers are like dipping and then plateau and they can't get it to climb again, and DC comes out and James Gunn's like, oh, you all love the Guardians. By the way, this is my new superhero thing, and it's an absolute bang, and everyone's fucking hyped about it and talking about it. Everyone's gonna be like, oh, okay, fuck you, Marvel. We care about DC now. Like DCU is what we're hooked on, and we want to see what's next. Marvel, like you're putting out too much. We can't keep up. We can't follow what you're doing. There's like it's a risky spot. I do think Marvel needs to, especially when you look at, like I said, Disney, Star Wars, and what they're producing and quality wise, versus what Disney Marvel is producing, it's like, come on, you got to step your game up.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.